No one knew this construction worker had just saved a life. Until a billionaire walked into the hospital, nobody noticed Daniel Carter that morning. At exactly 6:12 a.m., while most of Chicago was still wrapped in gray clouds and half-awake commuters rushed toward coffee shops and train stations, Daniel was already climbing the steel staircase of a 40-story office tower still under construction. He carried the same faded metal lunchbox he'd used for over a decade. The paint had chipped away years ago, and a tiny butterfly sticker, placed there by his daughter when she was 7, still clung stubbornly to one corner. He never removed it. Every scratch on that lunchbox reminded him why he woke up before dawn every day. Daniel wasn't extraordinary. He wasn't famous. He didn't own expensive watches or designer suits. His work boots had been repaired so many times that even the leather seemed tired. His gloves had holes stitched over older holes. At 43 years old, years of lifting concrete, steel beams, and heavy equipment had left his shoulders permanently stiff. Most mornings, his back hurt before he even got out of bed. Yet he never complained. Because somewhere across the city, his 20-year-old daughter, Emma, was chasing the dream that had kept him alive after losing everything else. She wanted to become a trauma nurse. Daniel intended to make sure nothing, not debt, not poverty, not life itself, stood in her way. He had made that promise to his late wife. And Daniel Carter never broke a promise. "Morning, old Dan." The voice belonged to Tyler, a 24-year-old apprentice carrying 2 coffees. "You know," Tyler laughed, "one day you're going to retire and actually sleep in." Daniel smiled. "I'll sleep when they stop pouring concrete." The younger workers laughed. Everyone liked Daniel. Not because he talked much. He didn't. But because whenever someone needed help lifting a beam, fixing a machine, or solving a problem nobody else could figure out, Daniel quietly appeared, solved it, then disappeared again. Some people spend years trying to be respected. Daniel earned respect simply by showing up every single day. By 7:30, rain had begun falling. Not heavy enough to stop construction, just enough to make every steel surface dangerously slick. The foreman, Mike Reynolds, gathered the crew. "Watch your footing today. Scaffolding's wet. No shortcuts. If I catch anyone rushing, you'll buy us donuts?" Tyler interrupted. Laughter erupted. Mike rolled his eyes. "I'll buy your funeral." That ended the jokes. Everyone returned to work. Daniel spent the next hour guiding rebar into position on the 3rd floor overlooking Michigan Avenue. From that height, the city looked almost peaceful. Tiny yellow taxis crawled between skyscrapers. People hurried beneath umbrellas. Cyclists splashed through puddles. Thousands of strangers. Thousands of stories. None of them knew Daniel existed. He was perfectly fine with that. At exactly 8:17 a.m., everything changed. It began with a sound. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just wrong. Construction workers develop instincts over years. Daniel had learned to recognize danger long before most people even realized something was happening. A snapping cable. A shifting beam. A cracked support. And now, the unmistakable scream of tires losing control. His head turned instantly. Half a block away, a black luxury SUV entered the intersection. At the same moment, a delivery truck came speeding downhill far too fast for the rain-soaked streets. Someone on the sidewalk screamed. The truck driver slammed the brakes. Too late. The massive vehicle skidded sideways. Its trailer whipped violently across the intersection. The SUV tried to avoid it. There wasn't enough room. Metal exploded against metal. Glass burst into the air like frozen rain. The collision echoed between skyscrapers. The SUV spun twice before crashing sideways into a traffic light pole. Silence. Just silence. Then chaos. Car alarms. People screaming. Horns blaring. Someone yelled, "Call 911." Another shouted, "Oh my God." Phones appeared almost instantly. Within seconds, dozens of people stood safely on the sidewalk recording the wreck. Nobody moved toward it. Daniel didn't think. He simply ran. "Dan!" Mike shouted behind him. "Where are you going?" Daniel ignored him. He vaulted over a stack of lumber, jumped the temporary construction fence, splashed through ankle-deep water. By the time he reached the SUV, fuel was already dripping beneath the engine. Steam hissed from the crushed hood. The front doors had collapsed inward. Inside sat an elderly man. Expensive tailored suit. Silver hair. Blood running down one side of his face. One hand twitched weakly against the steering wheel. He was alive. Barely. Daniel grabbed the driver's door. It wouldn't move. Someone nearby yelled, "Don't touch it. It could explode." Daniel looked through the shattered side window. The old man's chest rose in tiny, desperate breaths. His neck rested at an unnatural angle. Years earlier, his wife Emily had convinced him to attend a Red Cross emergency response course. "I'll never use this," he'd complained. Emily only smiled. "You never know." Standing beside the wreckage, Daniel suddenly remembered every lesson. If he pulled the man out carelessly, he could snap his spine. If he waited, the fire could kill him. Neither option guaranteed survival. Daniel climbed through the shattered rear window. Broken glass sliced his jacket. He barely noticed. The old man's eyes fluttered open. They met Daniel's. Fear. Pure fear. "It's okay," Daniel whispered. "My name's Daniel. I'm going to help you." The man tried to speak. Only one word escaped. "Please." Daniel gently stabilized his neck. "It's all right. Don't move. You hear me? Don't move." Outside, smoke thickened. A woman cried. Someone shouted that firefighters were still several minutes away. Daniel glanced toward the dashboard. The metal had folded around the driver's legs. The seatbelt had jammed beneath twisted steel. He searched desperately. Then he saw it. A steel pry bar, probably thrown from the nearby construction site during the impact. He grabbed it, wedged it into the crushed doorframe. Pulled. Nothing. He adjusted. Pulled harder. The muscles in his arms screamed. Still nothing. Rain dripped into his eyes. His boots slipped against shattered glass. Outside, everyone watched. Nobody entered the vehicle. One more attempt. Daniel planted both feet, took one deep breath, and pushed with everything he had. The steel groaned. Bent. Another inch. Again. Crack. The frame shifted. Just enough. "Hey!" Daniel shouted toward the crowd. "I need 2 people." Nobody moved. For one terrible second, everyone simply stared. Then a young cyclist dropped his bicycle. "I'm coming." A woman wearing a business suit threw off her heels. "So am I." Together they grabbed the bent door. Daniel counted. 1, 2, 3. The opening widened. Barely, but it was enough. Daniel carefully lifted the old man's shoulders while protecting his neck. The cyclist supported his legs. The woman steadied his spine. Slowly, painfully, they pulled him free. The moment Richard's body cleared the vehicle, a loud pop echoed beneath the hood. Daniel's instincts screamed. Run. They had barely reached the sidewalk when flames erupted from the engine. A second later, boom. The explosion shook nearby buildings. A wave of heat blasted across the street. Burning debris flew into the air. People screamed. Windows shattered. The cyclist instinctively ducked. The businesswoman fell to the pavement. Daniel threw himself over the unconscious stranger, shielding him from flying metal with his own body. For several endless seconds, fire raged. Then, silence returned once more. Only this time, it sounded different. It sounded like survival. Sirens grew louder until the entire intersection seemed to pulse with red and blue light. Firefighters rushed toward the burning SUV while paramedics surrounded the injured man. Daniel remained on his knees beside him, one hand still supporting the back of his neck. A paramedic dropped a medical bag onto the pavement. "What happened?" "High-impact side collision," Daniel answered. "Possible spinal injury. He was conscious before we moved him, but his breathing became weaker." The paramedic looked at him with surprise. "You medical?" Daniel shook his head. "Construction." Another medic checked the man's pulse. "It's fading." They moved quickly, fitting an oxygen mask over his face and securing him to a spinal board. Daniel tried to stand, but a sudden pain shot through his left shoulder. He looked down and saw blood running from a deep cut near his elbow. A piece of glass had sliced through his jacket. "You're hurt," the businesswoman said. Daniel looked at the wound as if it belonged to someone else. "I'm fine. You just threw yourself over him during an explosion. He needed help. So do you." Before Daniel could respond, the older man's hand lifted weakly from the stretcher. His fingers moved as though searching for something. Daniel stepped closer. The man's eyes opened. For one brief moment, they were clear. "Your name?" he whispered through the oxygen mask. "Daniel." "Daniel what?" "Carter." The man stared at him. Something changed in his expression. Confusion, recognition, or perhaps Daniel only imagined it. "Carter," the man repeated. "Yes." The paramedics pushed the stretcher toward the ambulance. The old man tried to say something else, but the mask muffled his voice. Then the doors closed. The ambulance pulled away. Daniel stood in the rain, watching until it disappeared. The businesswoman picked up his hard hat from the street and handed it to him. You saved his life. Daniel placed the hat beneath his arm. We don't know that yet. You went into a burning car for a stranger. So did you. She gave him a tired smile. Only after you showed us how. Before Daniel could answer, Mike Reynolds came running across the street. What were you thinking? Daniel turned. Mike's face was pale with anger and fear. I heard the crash. You left the site. There was a man trapped. You ignored me. I didn't have time to ask permission. Mike stared at the blood on Daniel's sleeve. Then he looked at the burning wreckage. The anger slowly disappeared from his face. You could have died. Daniel looked back toward the road. So could he. Mike opened his mouth, but no words came. Behind them, people were still filming. A local reporter hurried toward Daniel with a microphone. Sir, can we get your name? Were you the man who entered the vehicle? Daniel took one step back. I need to get back to work. You just rescued someone from an explosion. The paramedics rescued him. But witnesses say Daniel walked away before she could finish. He crossed the street, climbed over the temporary fence, and picked up the steel measuring tape he had dropped before running toward the accident. Tyler stared at him. You're seriously going back to work? Daniel looked up at the unfinished tower. Concrete won't pour itself. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Mike removed his own jacket and handed it to Daniel. Go clean that cut. It's not bad. That wasn't a suggestion. Daniel accepted the jacket. As he walked toward the site office, the workers began clapping. At first, only Tyler. Then another man joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire crew was applauding. Daniel lowered his head, embarrassed. He had never been comfortable with attention. Stop that, he muttered. Tyler grinned. Not a chance, old Dan. By noon, a shaky cell phone video of the explosion had spread across social media. The recording did not show Daniel climbing into the vehicle. It only captured the final seconds, 3 figures dragging an injured man toward the sidewalk, followed by Daniel shielding him from the blast. The video had no clear view of Daniel's face. The caption simply read, "Construction worker saves stranger seconds before SAR explodes." Thousands of people shared it. Some called him a hero. Some accused the video of being staged. Others argued about whether he had made the injuries worse by moving the victim. Daniel knew none of this. His phone was old, the screen was cracked, and he rarely used social media. By 5:30 that evening, the rain had stopped. Daniel boarded a crowded bus and took a seat near the back. His shoulder ached. His cut had been cleaned and wrapped with gauze from the first aid cabinet. He stared out the window as Chicago passed in blurred lights and wet pavement. All he could think about was the old man's face. Carter? The way he had repeated Daniel's last name bothered him. It had sounded important. But Daniel had never met him before. He was certain of that. When the bus reached his neighborhood, Daniel walked 3 blocks to a small grocery store. He counted the cash in his wallet. $43.12. He needed milk, eggs, pasta, and something for dinner. He selected each item carefully, comparing prices and checking expiration dates. At the meat counter, he found a package of chicken marked down by half. He placed it in his basket. His phone rang as he reached the checkout line. Emma. He smiled immediately. Hey, kiddo. Dad, where are you? At the store. Are you okay? Her voice sounded frightened. Daniel's smile faded. I'm fine. I saw a video. He closed his eyes. What video? A car exploded near your construction site. There was a worker in an orange vest. He looked like you. Daniel looked at the gauze beneath his sleeve. I got a small cut. A small cut. I've had worse opening a can of beans. Dad. That one word carried all the fear she had been trying to hide. Daniel stepped out of the line. I'm okay, Emma. Were you the man in the video? He hesitated. Yes. Oh my God. It looked worse than it was. The car exploded on top of you. Not on top of me. Near me. That is not better. Daniel leaned against a shelf. There was someone trapped. You could have died. I know. What would I do if something happened to you? Her voice broke. Daniel's chest tightened. For 3 years, he had tried to be both parents. He had tried to be strong enough that Emma never had to worry about losing anyone again. But strength, he realized, could also look like recklessness to someone who loved you. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Emma remained silent. I didn't want to scare you. Did he survive? I don't know. She took a shaky breath. Would you do it again? Daniel looked at the shoppers moving around him. At the cashier scanning groceries. At a mother holding a child's hand. At an old man struggling to read a label. Yes, he said. Emma sighed. I knew you'd say that. I'm sorry. No, you're not. A faint laugh entered her voice. Not really. No, you're impossible. I've been told. Come home. I'm making dinner. I already picked up groceries. Then bring them. And don't try to tell me you're fine until I see you. When Daniel arrived at their apartment, Emma was waiting beside the door. She hugged him so quickly that the grocery bag nearly fell from his hands. Then she pulled away and examined his face, shoulders, and arms as though conducting a medical assessment. You're bleeding through the bandage. It's barely. Sit down. Emma, sit. Daniel obeyed. She brought her nursing kit from her bedroom and replaced the dressing. Her hands were gentle but firm. You need stitches. I don't. You absolutely do. I have work tomorrow. That sentence has nothing to do with stitches. Daniel watched her clean the wound. She had Emily's eyes. The same calm concentration. The same ability to make him feel foolish without saying much. You would have been a good doctor, he said. Emma looked up. I want to be a nurse. I know. Doctors treat injuries. Nurses stay when the doctors leave. Daniel smiled. Your mother used to say something like that. I know. That's why I chose it. They ate pasta at the small kitchen table. Daniel avoided discussing the accident. Emma pretended to let him. After dinner, she opened her laptop and searched for updates. The rescued man had been taken to St. Catherine Medical Center. His condition was critical but stable. His identity had not yet been released. Daniel read the headline twice. Critical but stable. Alive. That was enough. He closed the laptop. Across the city, on the top floor of St. Catherine Medical Center, Dr. Olivia Harrison stood outside the intensive care unit. She was 35 years old, one of the youngest trauma surgeons ever appointed to the hospital's executive board. Her dark hair was tied back. She still wore the clothes she had traveled in after rushing home from Boston. Inside the room, her father lay unconscious beneath white sheets. Richard Harrison, 71 years old, founder of Harrison Global Infrastructure, owner of hotels, ports, highways, energy companies, and more wealth than most people could imagine. To the world, Richard Harrison was a billionaire. To Olivia, he was simply the stubborn man who never remembered to take his blood pressure medication and still called her every Sunday morning. A cardiologist stepped into the hall. He's stable. Olivia exhaled. Will he recover? It's too early to know the full extent, but the spinal alignment was protected remarkably well. The paramedics? No. The man who pulled him from the car. Olivia frowned. The construction worker? The doctor nodded. According to the emergency team, your father's neck had been forced against the crushed pillar. Whoever moved him understood that his spine needed support. Without that, he could have been paralyzed, or worse. Olivia looked through the glass. Do we know who he is? A witness heard him say his name was Daniel Carter. She repeated it softly. Daniel Carter. A security officer approached with a tablet. We found several videos, but none show his face clearly. Police are checking the construction site. Find him. We're working on it. No, Olivia said. I mean find him. Her voice remained calm, but the officer understood the difference. This man risked his life for my father. I need to thank him. At that moment, Richard moved. Olivia rushed inside. His eyes slowly opened. Dad. He looked disoriented. Olivia. I'm here. His lips were dry. The man. What man? The one who saved me. We're looking for him. Richard turned his head slightly and winced. Daniel Carter. Yes, that was his name. Richard stared at the ceiling. Carter. Olivia noticed the same strange expression Daniel had seen earlier. Do you know him? Richard closed his eyes. I knew his father. The following morning, Daniel returned to work before sunrise. Mike was waiting at the entrance. You're not working. Daniel stopped. Why? Because your arm needs stitches. It's fine. And because 3 news vans are parked across the street. Daniel looked toward the road. Reporters stood beside cameras beneath bright lights. One of them recognized his orange vest. That's him. Daniel immediately turned away. Mike laughed. Too late. Within seconds, microphones surrounded them. Mr. Carter, how does it feel to be called a hero? Did you know the man you saved? Were you afraid the vehicle would explode? Have you heard from his family? Daniel raised both hands. I just did what anyone should have done. One reporter leaned closer. But no one else did it. Daniel's expression changed. The noise around them quieted. He looked toward the intersection where the accident had occurred. People were scared, he said. Being scared doesn't make someone bad. Then what made you run toward the car? Daniel considered the question. Someone had to. He stepped through the gate. Mike blocked the reporters from following. Inside the site, Tyler handed Daniel a coffee. You're famous. I'd rather be unemployed. You might get a medal. I'd rather get overtime. Tyler laughed. Before Daniel could take a sip, a black sedan pulled up beside the site. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He spoke briefly with Mike, then approached Daniel. Mr. Carter? Daniel nodded. My name is Samuel Reed. I represent the Harrison family. Daniel looked toward the sedan. Harrison, the man you rescued, is Richard Harrison. The name meant nothing to Daniel at first. Then Tyler nearly dropped his coffee. Richard Harrison? The billionaire. Samuel gave a polite nod. Daniel stared at him. I didn't know. Mr. Harrison would like to see you. Is he okay? He's awake. The tension left Daniel's shoulders. Good. We can take you to the hospital now. Daniel looked up at the unfinished tower. I'm working. Mike appeared beside him. No, you're not. Daniel turned. You just said, I changed my mind. Go. I can visit after my shift. Mike crossed his arms. Daniel, the man you pulled from a burning vehicle wants to see you. The concrete will survive without you for an hour. The black sedan delivered Daniel to a private hospital entrance. He felt uncomfortable the moment he stepped inside. Polished marble floors reflected bright chandeliers. Employees greeted Samuel by name. Daniel became aware of every stain on his work clothes. His boots left faint traces of dust behind him. A receptionist looked at him, then quickly looked away. Samuel led him into a private elevator. Mr. Harrison has asked that you not speak to reporters about his condition. I don't like speaking to reporters about anything. Samuel smiled. I think you'll get along. The elevator opened onto the top floor. Olivia stood near the nurse's station. She wore a white coat and held a medical chart. When she saw Daniel, she walked toward him. Daniel Carter? Yes. She extended her hand. I'm Olivia Harrison. Daniel shook it. Carefully. How is your father? He's alive because of you. He's alive because the ambulance arrived. No, Olivia said. He's alive because you kept his neck stable and pulled him out before the explosion. Daniel lowered his eyes. I'm glad he made it. Olivia noticed the bandage on his arm. You're injured. It's nothing. That is a phrase men use when they don't want doctors asking questions. My daughter said the same thing. Your daughter sounds intelligent. She gets it from her mother. Olivia led him into Richard's room. The old man looked smaller beneath the hospital sheets than he had inside the wreckage. Machines surrounded him. A brace supported his neck. When Daniel entered, Richard's eyes opened. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Richard lifted one hand. Daniel stepped closer and took it. You came, Richard whispered. You asked. I owe you my life. Daniel shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Richard studied his face. What was your father's name? Daniel stiffened. Thomas Carter. Richard closed his eyes. Olivia looked between them. You really knew him? Richard nodded. Sit down, Daniel. Daniel remained standing. How did you know my father? Richard looked toward the window. 32 years ago, before Harrison Global existed, I owned a small construction company with 6 employees and more debt than sense. A faint smile crossed his face. We were building a warehouse near the river. One afternoon, a support cable snapped. A steel beam fell. Daniel listened without moving. I was beneath it, Richard continued. Your father saw what happened. He pushed me out of the way. Olivia's eyes widened. Richard's voice became quieter. The beam crushed his left leg. Daniel remembered the scars. His father had always said the injury came from a workplace accident. He had never explained more. He spent nearly a year recovering, Richard said. The company's insurance refused to cover everything. I promised I would help. Daniel's jaw tightened. Did you? Richard looked at him. Not enough. The room grew silent. I was young, Richard said. Afraid. The business was close to bankruptcy. My lawyer told me admitting responsibility could destroy the company. So I let the insurance company fight him. Daniel's hand curled into a fist. My father lost our house. I know. He couldn't work normally again. I know. He drank because he was in pain. Richard lowered his gaze. I know. Daniel stepped back. Olivia looked at her father with shock. Dad, you never told me this. I told no one. Daniel's voice was controlled, but anger burned beneath every word. My father died believing he had failed us. Richard's eyes filled with regret. He didn't fail you. I failed him. Daniel turned toward the door. Daniel, Richard called. He stopped but did not look back. For years, I tried to find him. When the company became successful, I wanted to repay everything. You wanted to repay him after you became rich enough that it wouldn't cost you anything. Richard flinched. Daniel finally turned. My father needed help when helping him could have hurt you. I know. He didn't need your guilt 30 years later. No, he needed courage. Richard's eyes glistened. Yes. Daniel opened the door. Olivia followed him into the hallway. Please wait. Daniel kept walking. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't do it. No, but I understand why you're angry. Daniel stopped beside the elevator. I spent years wondering why my father became a different man after that accident. He thought no one cared. He thought his life was worth less than the company he worked for. Olivia had no answer. The elevator arrived. Before Daniel stepped inside, Richard's voice came through the open doorway. Your father visited me once. Daniel froze. He came to my office after the settlement, Richard said. I expected him to threaten me. Daniel slowly turned. He didn't. He said, a man learns who he is when doing the right thing costs him something. Richard swallowed. I have heard those words every day of my life. Daniel looked at him. And what did you learn? Richard's face crumpled. That I was a coward. Daniel entered the elevator. The doors closed between them. For the rest of the day, Daniel worked in silence. Tyler tried to ask what had happened. Daniel said only that Richard was recovering. That evening, he told Emma everything. She sat across from him at the kitchen table, stunned. Grandpa saved him. Yes. And then his company abandoned Grandpa? Yes. Emma looked angry. He should pay you. Daniel shook his head. I don't want his money. You're behind on rent. I said no. Dad, this isn't charity. He owes our family. Money won't change what happened. No, but refusing it won't change anything either. Daniel stood and carried the dishes to the sink. I don't want my life tied to his guilt. Emma followed him. Maybe it isn't about guilt. What else could it be? Responsibility. Daniel turned. Emma's eyes were bright with emotion. Mom died because we couldn't afford the specialist she needed soon enough. Daniel's face tightened. We did everything we could. I know, but money mattered. He looked away. You work until your hands bleed because you don't want me to have debt. Money matters. I won't sell your grandfather's pain. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Emma took his rough hands in hers. I'm asking you not to confuse forgiveness with pretending nothing happened. Daniel said nothing. 2 days later, Richard Harrison held a press conference from his hospital room. Daniel saw it on a television in the side office. Richard sat upright in bed, wearing a neck brace. Olivia stood beside him. Cameras filled the room. Richard began with a statement about the accident. He thanked the paramedics, firefighters, doctors, and witnesses. Then he spoke Daniel's name. Daniel Carter saved my life, he said. But this is not the first time a member of his family saved mine. Daniel's body became still. Richard told the story of Thomas Carter. He did not hide the company's failure. He did not blame insurance lawyers. He admitted that he had protected his business at the expense of an injured worker. I built a fortune after abandoning the man who gave me the chance to build it, Richard said. For decades, I called my silence regret. It was not regret. It was cowardice. Reporters shouted questions. Richard raised one hand. I cannot undo the past. I cannot return Thomas Carter's health, home, or years to his family. But I can stop hiding from what I did. He announced the creation of the Thomas Carter Worker Protection Fund. The fund would provide emergency medical support, legal assistance, and income protection for injured construction workers and their families. Richard committed $500 million. The room erupted. Daniel stared at the screen. Mike stood beside him. That's a lot of guilt. Daniel's expression remained unreadable. Mike continued, but it might also help a lot of people. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the construction site and found Richard waiting beside the gate in a wheelchair. Olivia stood behind him. Reporters had not been invited. There were no cameras. Daniel stopped several feet away. You should be in the hospital. I was discharged. You should be resting. I've rested from this conversation for 32 years. Daniel looked at the wheelchair. You came all this way to ask me to forgive you. Richard shook his head. No, then why are you here? To ask you to help me. Daniel frowned. Richard handed him a folder. Inside were plans for the Worker Protection Fund, medical grants, safety training, widow support, scholarships for children of injured laborers. Daniel turned the pages slowly. I don't know anything about running a foundation. You know what workers need. Hire an expert. I have hired experts my entire life. Experts told me how to protect my company from your father. Richard looked up at him. This time, I need someone who will tell me when I am wrong. Daniel closed the folder. You think giving me a title fixes everything? No, a salary? No, then what does? Nothing. Richard's answer surprised him. Nothing fixes what I did, the old man continued. This is not repair. It is responsibility. Daniel looked toward the workers entering the site. Men carrying lunchboxes. Men with damaged knees and worn boots. Men who could lose everything because of one snapped cable, one falling beam, or one employer more concerned about deadlines than lives. My father would have hated your name on the building, Daniel said. Richard gave a faint smile. Then we won't put my name on it. Daniel looked again at the folder. I have conditions. Richard nodded. The fund must be independent. Workers get seats on the board. Claims are reviewed by people who understand labor, not just lawyers. Families don't wait months for emergency support. Agreed. No publicity using my father's face. Agreed. And I keep my job. Richard blinked. You want to continue working construction? I am a construction worker. You could lead this full time. Maybe someday. But I'm not walking into a suit and pretending I know what men need from behind a desk. Richard extended his hand. Then teach me. Daniel looked at it for a long moment. Finally, he shook it. He did not forgive Richard that day. Forgiveness did not arrive like lightning. It came slowly. In difficult conversations. In documents rewritten to protect workers. In hospital bills paid before families had to beg. In scholarships given without cameras. In Richard listening when Daniel told him that good intentions meant nothing without action. Months passed. Richard recovered enough to walk with a cane. Daniel divided his time between the construction site and the foundation. He refused a luxury office. Instead, he chose a simple room near the building entrance, where workers could reach him without passing through executive security. Emma received the first Thomas Carter nursing scholarship. She tried to refuse it. Daniel told her the same thing she had once told him. Responsibility is not charity. 2 years later, Emma graduated. Daniel sat in the front row wearing a suit that Tyler had helped him choose. The jacket felt too tight around his shoulders. The shoes hurt his feet. He had never been prouder. When Emma's name was announced, Daniel stood before anyone else. He clapped so loudly that people turned to look at him. Emma crossed the stage, received her diploma, and searched the crowd. Her eyes found her father. Then she looked toward the empty seat beside him, the seat they had saved for Emily. Daniel placed one hand over the small silver wedding ring hanging from a chain around his neck. He had managed to buy it back from the pawn shop after joining the foundation. After the ceremony, Richard approached them with a cane. Your mother would be proud, he told Emma. She is, Emma replied. Richard looked at Daniel. I wish Thomas could see this. Daniel glanced at the graduates laughing with their families. He would have cared more about what happens tomorrow. Richard nodded. Then tomorrow we keep working. Years later, a bronze plaque was installed near the entrance of the foundation's first medical center. Daniel had resisted the idea until Emma showed him the final wording. It did not mention Richard Harrison. It did not mention wealth. It did not describe Daniel as a hero. The plaque read, Thomas Carter Worker Care Center. A man learns who he is when doing the right thing costs him something. Beneath those words were 2 simple lines. For those who build our cities. And for the families who hold them together. On the day the center opened, hundreds of construction workers gathered outside. Some had been injured. Some had lost jobs. Some had lost fathers, mothers, husbands, or wives. Many had already received help from the fund. A reporter approached Daniel as he stood near the entrance. You saved Richard Harrison's life, she said. He says you also saved his legacy. Daniel shook his head. No one saves a legacy. What do you mean? You change what you do next. The reporter looked toward the plaque. Do you consider yourself a hero? Daniel smiled. He had been asked that question countless times. His answer had never changed. No, why not? Because I was only there for one moment. He gestured toward the nurses, workers, volunteers, and families entering the building. These people show up every day. The reporter lowered her microphone. Across the street, traffic moved through the intersection where the accident had happened years earlier. Most drivers had no idea what had occurred there. They did not know about the burning SUV. They did not know about the construction worker who had climbed inside. They did not know about Thomas Carter, the steel beam, or the billionaire who had spent decades running from his shame. Cities are filled with invisible stories, acts of courage that never become headlines, sacrifices made by people whose names are never remembered, lives saved by strangers who expect nothing in return. Daniel watched Emma enter the medical center wearing her nurse's uniform. She turned and waved. He waved back. Then he noticed a worker near the entrance struggling to carry a heavy box. Without hesitation, Daniel walked over. "Need a hand?" The man looked relieved. "Thanks." Daniel lifted one side. Together, they carried the box inside. No cameras followed him. No crowd applauded. Nobody called him a hero. And that was exactly how Daniel preferred it. Because the greatest thing he had learned was that a life is not defined by the moment everyone sees. It is defined by all the quiet moments when no one is watching. The moments when doing the right thing is dangerous, or inconvenient, or expensive. The moments when fear tells you to step back. The moments when you step forward anyway. Years earlier, in the rain, Daniel had run toward a burning car because someone needed help. He did not know the man inside was a billionaire. He did not know their father's histories were connected. He did not know that one act of courage would expose a 32-year secret and transform thousands of lives. He only knew that another human being was trapped. And sometimes, that is all anyone needs to know.